96 homes on my land? Evelyn's voice cut like thunder. The HOA board smirked, convinced they had crushed an old woman with power she could never match. They laughed at her silence, dismissed her protests, and built their empire brick by brick. But what they didn't know was that Evelyn had been waiting, and when her trap closed, they would lose everything. The new subdivision rose like a city overnight. Where there were once rolling fields and ancient oak trees, there now stood rows of cookie-cutter homes, identical fences, driveways, and manicured lawns. The HOA boasted of their achievement. 96 homes, a brand new community, a future of wealth. They posed for photographs with golden shovels, cut ribbons, and shook hands with bankers. Not one of them looked toward the small farmhouse that stood at the edge of the land. That farmhouse belonged to Evelyn Carter. Evelyn was 71, with hair streaked silver and skin weathered by both time and sun. To strangers, she was simply an old widow, a school teacher who had outlived her husband and now lived quietly on her last few acres. But Evelyn was far more than she appeared. Her family's history was carved into that land. Her grandfather, once a sharecropper, had worked years under brutal conditions until, through sheer determination, he purchased the very fields he once tilled. For him, it wasn't just property. It was freedom. It was proof that his bloodline had a place in a world that had once denied them everything. Evelyn grew up on that soil, climbing its pecan trees, fishing in its creek, hearing her grandfather's stories about perseverance. "This land is our soul," he would say. "Protect it, no matter the cost." So when developers came knocking decades later, Evelyn knew what her grandfather would have told her. Stand firm, but the HOA didn't ask. They took at first. It was letters. "We'd like to purchase your unused land." Then came the low offers. When Evelyn refused, they escalated. Harassment, pressure, false claims filed at the county office. Finally, one day, bulldozers appeared. Evelyn stood on her porch, clutching her deed in her hand as men in hard hats leveled the earth. She shouted, but no one listened. The workers waved her off. "The papers are signed," they said. But Evelyn knew. Those papers were forged. Neighbors pitied her. Some whispered, "She's too old to fight them." Others said, "She lose everything." And Evelyn, she stayed silent. Not because she was beaten, but because she was patient. For years, Evelyn had prepared. With her nephew, a lawyer no one took seriously, she had fortified her deed, registered her boundaries, and secured every piece of documentation the law demanded. She let the HOA build. She let them spend. She let them sell. 96 homes rose from stolen earth. Families moved in, painted walls, planted gardens, all unaware that the ground beneath their feet was never theirs. And when the final house sold, when the HOA celebrated their triumph, Evelyn finally made her move. She walked into the county courthouse, wearing her Sunday dress, her worn hands clutching a thick folder. Inside it, every deed, every survey, every legal receipt, proof. The courtroom filled with tension. HOA executives smirked, confident their lawyers would crush her. Homeowners sat nervously, unaware they were standing on contested ground. Reporters gathered, sensing a story. Evelyn stood before the judge, her voice calm, steady. "This land has been in my family for nearly a century. The HOA built on it without right. Every home, every street, every improvement rests on stolen soil, and by law, everything built upon it belongs to me." Gasps erupted. The HOA lawyers scrambled, waving contracts and papers. But the judge's eyes narrowed as Evelyn's nephew laid down the real documents, notarized, certified, undeniable. The HOA hadn't stolen just 1 acre. They had stolen it all, and the law was clear. They could not keep what was never theirs. The gavel struck like thunder. The land and all improvements belonged to Mrs. Evelyn Carter. The room exploded. Homeowners shouted in disbelief. HOA executives turned pale. Reporters scribbled furiously. Evelyn simply stood, shoulders straight, her eyes unflinching. The HOA thought they had buried her. But they had built her empire. 96 homes, 96 properties, 96 victories. Reporters rushed her for statements, but Evelyn spoke. Only once, her words carrying through the chaos. My grandfather fought for this land. He paid for it with sweat and dignity. You thought you could erase his legacy, but this land remembers who it belongs to. Her words struck deep. Within days, headlines across the country blaze. OA builds homes on woman's land, now she owns them all. Asterisk, the HOA dissolved in disgrace. Evelyn, once overlooked, became a legend. Families who once doubted her now stood in awe. From that day, Evelyn's story was not one of pity, but of power. Not because she shouted, not because she fought with fists, but because she endured with dignity, patience, and a trap so perfect that greed destroyed itself. Evelyn's story teaches us that silence is not weakness. Patience is not surrender. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from fighting, but from waiting. What about you? Have you ever seen greed collapse under its own weight? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more cinematic stories of dignity, justice, and hidden heroes.